Peace and love, everyone. Welcome to my channel. And if you're new, please like and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this Wednesday. I think this may be our first live of the cycle 2026 in the Gregorian calendar. And if it is, welcome. Happy 2026, everyone. Thank you for tuning in this evening. And I hope everyone is well and in good health and surrounded by peace and joy, happiness wherever you are. And tonight's topic we're going to be talking about is embracing our spiritual and cultural roots. There's a whole lot of going on planet Earth. And in the last few years, it seemed like when is it not a whole lot of going on? And it's definitely at this time things are time is accelerating. Many of us, particularly those who are sensitive and even the not so spiritually sensitive people, recognize and acknowledge that time is speeding up. We also notice that there's seems to be more social and political unrest on planet Earth, in every country, it seems, and on each of the continents. There's so much happening, and change is taking place at a much faster rate. We're in the age of information, so we're finding out a lot of things much more quickly than in the past, I would say. And also, we have access to so much more information that was kept hidden once upon a time. And so, not a lot of things are being kept hidden anymore. A lot of things are being exposed. And with that exposure comes people's response to that and how they feel and how they respond to it. And a lot is changing and a lot has been changing, and even more change, I think, is coming in the upcoming months. So this is a with the changes, especially the things that are causing a lot of difficulty and challenges on the planet. And I'm being very intentional with my choice of words to keep things positive, because I always want to keep things positive here at Astral Healing Arts channel. We want to be that light in this dark hour, because there is so much negativity and darkness out there, but we want to kind of shift things and be the alchemist of change and positivity and love and peace and harmony here in YouTube land. So with all the changes that are taking place and the upheaval, and whenever there's social or political upheaval, not only are things being shaken up, it's kind of like a sifting process. If you've ever sifted flour, you scoop up the flour or scoop up soil or whatever, and you pour it into the thing that you sifted. And when you shake it up, you see all kinds of things. You see small things that you normally wouldn't see in the compacted flour or the compacted dirt. But when you sift it and shake it up, you start to see all these smaller things and impurities, and um it just exposes things that you wouldn't see when it's all clumped together. And I even watched someone sift soil for compost. She had this huge thing at this community garden I went to last summer, and we dumped the compost on it, and she shook it, and it had a wire, kind of like a mesh wire um tool with wooden handles, and she shook it. And when she shook the compost material, you saw all these other things that you didn't see, small bits of fruit peelings and egg shells and all other kinds of natural organic material that was um decomposing to create the compost. But from just looking at the pile, it just looked like a big pile of leaves and soil. But this is kind of what we are seeing in the world around us right now. Things are being sifted, if you will, and as they're being sifted, you're seeing so much impurities, and so many things are being exposed that you wouldn't normally see or be aware of, and it's happening at a very fast rate. And with that, there's so much questions that are coming up that people are seeking answers to, and people are demanding answers and demanding change, um, a change that is comfortable for the people, and one that satisfies the people. And so with this satisfaction, brings about change. And so at this time is very, very imperative and important that we, beloveds, embrace our spiritual and cultural roots so that we can weather the storm and not succumb to it. Our spiritual and our cultural roots are tools to help us navigate our way through life's challenges and through um, difficult times as well as the good times. And so we want to remember them, these tools at all times, and make them a daily part of our lives, not just something that we tap into and use as a resource during times of challenge and strife, but we should be using them at all times and make it a part of our daily living and daily practice. Um, excuse me, got something caught in my throat. So to embrace our spiritual roots, or any roots, cultural roots as well, we must know who we are as a people. Knowing who we are helps us define more clearly what our cultural roots are. And all, the culture is a way of life. In order to tap into your culture, you need to know what your culture is and clearly define it. Many of our cultures have been compromised and colonized, and so you have some people around the world who are struggling to maintain their culture, embrace it, re reestablish it, and there's a great movement around the world of people doing that. But whatever it is, find out, what that is, and how you can embrace and tap into it and use it, and how it can enhance your life. Knowing yourself is the key to that. Know that we come from a diverse ancestry, and but some things we all have in common as people of color and as indigenous people and melanated people. We are a very highly spiritual people, a supernatural people connected to the earth and to the cosmos, and we have a special place as custodians of the planet, or vicegerents, as some people call them. And we are as much a part of nature as nature is itself. Nature is not something separate from us, but it's one and the same. And we have to start looking at ourselves in that manner, and looking at who we are and whose we are and where we are in the cycle of life, and how the decisions we make going forward, and the decisions we make on a daily basis, how it has an impact on ourselves, our families, our community, one another, the people in our culture and other cultures, and the impact that it has on the planet. We should always be aware of that, our place in this grander scheme of things. So these are some of the ways that we can embrace our spiritual and cultural roots. We are among the primordial ones, the children of the sun, the sacred earth keepers, the ancient ones. All of this is who we are. We are those ancestors embodied, because we are our ancestors and our ancestors are us. We share their DNA, and they pass down what um that sacred knowledge that has been forgotten to some, but many of us are beginning to remember it, and in that remembering, reestablish it and take our place as those sacred earth keepers and wisdom keepers. And we have to remember that that is who we are. Many things that other people study and have to practice for years, many of us can do naturally, and it's just a part of our lives. Our initiation into the spiritual aspect of life, or the spiritual realm, is life itself. Life has a way of initiating you. I had no idea when I was a child what my soul path was, or my incarnation objective was. I knew there was something, but I didn't know what. And so as the years have gone by, and different life experiences have manifested, you start to discover, your incarnation objective, or your life purpose, or whatever you want to call it. I look at them as one and the same, but you start to discover. And there's a saying, I don't remember who said the quote, but the two most important days in your life are when you're born, and when you discover why you're born, or the purpose of your birth. So that would be your life purpose or incarnation objective. Why are you here? What is your role in this grand scheme of things, in this great shifting of timelines? We're coming out of the cycle of darkness, and or what some people call the Kali Yuga, and we're going into a new, totally new um paradigm shift. What is your role in it? Do you have a role in it? Are you, and then if so, are you taking steps to fulfill that role and that purpose? um our ancestors, and we are carriers of their DNA. We're carriers of their thoughts, their energies, their knowledge, even though some of them went through very difficult times, and were not allowed to preserve their cultural roots, and we're not allowed to preserve or practice their cultural practices and traditions and things. Many of us in this generation are embracing that, and rediscovering that, and reestablishing it, and practicing it like never before. And this is also a sign of the time, as people move away from the materialism, and move more towards embracing a natural, simple way of life, and embracing their spirituality. And remember, family, we are spirit. To connect to spirit, we are spirit. We are spiritual beings having this human experience, and spirit is energy, and we are all made up of energy, just like everything around us that is alive and vibrating is also energy. So remember that, it's not separate. It's not something that's different from, you know, what we focus a lot of our attentions on, but we are also spirit and energy. Um, let's see. Colonization and all of its devastating effects disrupted, damaged, displaced, and disconnected us from our spiritual selves. So not only was our lands and our homelands colonized, but our culture was colonized. Our spiritual connection was colonized. Our languages, which helps pass on our traditions and our folk ways, and family was colonized. How we were to live our lives and our all of our sacred practices also were colonized. You know, a lot of things we were not allowed to do and to practice, and practitioners of spiritual wisdom and the medicine people, a lot of them were eliminated, um, and or suppressed or forbidden to teach or practice sacred medicine knowledge that has been passed down for thousands, if maybe even millions of years, from generation to generation. And a lot of that sacred knowledge was lost. There are some languages that are extinct now. You know, some of our ancestral languages are extinct because the last ones who spoke those languages, you know, eventually transitioned, and families were separated and displaced, and sometimes children were taken from the parents and the elders, and so there was no one to teach them those languages, so it was lost. Or just an example. And so language is very powerful because language is expressions of thought. So if you lose a language, if a language goes extinct, and if the last person that speaks that language um, transitions to spirit and to source, and that language is lost, you've lost a whole history there. You know, it's almost like a encyclopedia, because um even greater than that, it's like just a record keeper with language, because you know your language evolves and develops over time, and the meaning of words and where they originate from. And also written languages, you know, many written languages, the language that we use now, you know, it came from older ancient languages, and the written text and things. And so if we never had things written down or preserved in stone, um, we would have even, I mean, we would be at such an even greater loss without that. Um, every aspect of our lives was targeted and controlled. And through that targeting and control, a lot of fear, excuse me, and a lot of distrust was created. And many of us lost our sense of connection to our spiritual and cultural roots, and lost the desire to be connected to that. They even have a word for it. I think uh I saw a documentary one time about an indigenous culture, where the children were taken away from the parents and sent to like boarding schools, and many of them were forced to speak, not allowed to speak their indigenous language. And when they became adults and went back home, they were so out of touch with their elders, their parents, um, their community, and they were called the lost generation or the stolen generation or something like that. So just imagine, you know, what that does to a person's soul, is feeling lost, feeling stolen, and not being able to connect to who you are. And your culture is a big part of who you are. Your ancestry is a big part of who you are. And many of us were taught not to honor ourselves, not to honor those traditions, not to honor our ancestors, and that, excuse me, that our spirituality was meaningless or a part, something evil or sinister, and none of that is true. Yes, there's good and with the opposite of good, but just because our traditions were seen as primitive by the colonizers doesn't mean that it was, because if a person doesn't treat you right, they can't teach you right. And if they are being destructive of indigenous people's cultures and way of life and history, you cannot expect them to be t- um, you cannot expect the things that they're telling you about your history and your culture to be authentic or to be beneficial to you, when it's actually designed to be the opposite. Many of us carry ancestral trauma, and we inherited it. It's been passed down from generation to generation. And part of the ancestral trauma was denial of our spiritual traditions and our connections to that aspect of ourselves. And that has caused a deep wound in many of us, more so than the displacement in some of the other aspects, because we are spirit itself, and spirit has a way of initiating you and showing up in your life. And many people are afraid of anything that goes beyond the status quo, outside the status quo, outside the box that they find themselves in. And some people are stuck to a certain script, and they are fearful of or distrustful of anything outside of that script. But who is writing this script? Who has put you on the hamster wheel? Who has defined for you what is right and what isn't, and what is true and what's not? And all of those things you must examine and take a look at, especially things that are telling you that natural spiritual phenomenon, natural ways of connecting to yourself and others is wrong or evil. Um, Despite all the long term devastating effects um, of, you know, the past events, some things survived and were passed down generation to generation in our sacred spiritual traditions or prayers and rituals, or we are just starting to remember them. Some people are fortunate that they get downloads, or they've done research into some of the ways of the ancestors, or they've gone out and actually sought people who were wisdom keepers or sacred medicine keepers, and to learn from them. There are many people who actually will travel to find people to teach them the sacred ways of their ancestors, or their spiritual and cultural practices, because they lost those things. So those hidden coils of DNA are being awakened as we are stepping into our power and reclaiming it. And as we reclaim it, our ancestors and those before us, they are rejoicing that we are coming home to self. A great awakening is taking place, and we are progressing, family, in leaps and bounds. I mean, we are in a time now where you can openly talk about spiritual phenomenon, the way people are embracing it, and embracing their cultural roots. You're seeing people gathering, having so many people are coming out to have, healing, joining each other in healing retreats, um, earth medicine or earth healing retreats, sacred circles, sound bath healing, sound meditations. All of these things are us remembering and embracing and reclaiming that. And as a yoga teacher myself, when I was growing up, I wasn't even exposed to yoga. I didn't see anyone practicing it. I think the first time I ever saw it was on television. And as the years went by, especially in the last since 2000, we're in 2026 now. I see people practicing yoga at fitness centers, in the park, schools. I've been very fortunate and blessed to be able to share the gift of yoga with people in many different settings, and also sharing meditation, something else that I was not exposed to, or it wasn't readily available. But now even have some schools where they're practicing transcendental meditation as a form of behavior management, or just for general purposes. And wellness is being talked about more. Self-care, self-love, all these things. This is the time period that we're in, and it's time for that. Decades ago, it was always just work, 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 rush, rush, rush. And a lot of times people neglected those things until they um, just had a crash. But now people are starting to embrace um, their self care and their wellness. And this is all a part of us practicing those sacred spiritual traditions and tapping into and embracing our spiritual and cultural roots. Many of us are experience a great awakening of our spiritual abilities or awareness, and we can use these abilities to help people, to help others who have may have lost their way, or who may be just beginning to join the awakening process, or just people who are looking for answers, or who are looking for guidance or healing. So use it, always use it for good. And it's a blessing that you are able to provide that kind of support to people. We are redefining who we are. Many of us have been told so many false things about who we are, who our ancestors are, where we come from, what land is actually part of our homeland, etc. There's so many, many, many falsehoods, and so many misclassifications. People are called different things by different people, and sometimes names that are derogatory or offensive were given to certain groups of people, certain tribes, if you will, for lack of a better term, or ethnic groups. And the name stuck, but that's not the name that the people call themselves, and that's not the name that they use to identify themselves. So many of us are redefining who we are in that way, and we're also redefining who we are culturally and spiritually, because many of us have been taught so many false um narratives about who we are, whose we are, what our role is, and even some things that we've been taught that's gender specific. Many people are redefining. Rituals give meaning to our daily lives, and we've talked about that before on this channel, and how daily rituals in the form of spiritual practices like prayer, yoga, meditation, chanting, reading different scriptures, all of those are rituals. Also, um, taking a spiritual bath is ritual. Using candles is ritual, whether it's for using sage or other incense to smudge yourself. That's ritual. So ritual is anything that you do with intention and purpose, and it's a part of your life, and it should be a daily part of your life, whether it's your spirit rich whether you're a religious person or spiritual or whatever. You should still have some form of ritual to set intentions, and ritual practices help give meaning to your life, and especially on a daily basis. And ritual can be in the form of prayers, repeating affirmations. You may have affirmations written down that you read, or that you change, with New Year, or on the solstices or whatever. Spiritual baths, meditation, sound baths, even sitting outside earthing, sitting with your feet in the grass or in the sand, if you're at the beach, spending time in nature. Anything that we do with intention is considered intention, and purpose and meaning is what you would call ritual. So I highly encourage you to have um, rituals, daily rituals that have meaning, that help you align with and embrace your spiritual and cultural roots. Please develop those type of rituals. Make it a part of your daily life. Remember also ritual, your self-care. Make your self-care a part of your daily ritual. Remember to honor yourself and others when you perform any rituals daily. Treat one another as a reflection of you or another you. Keep it, that is similar to the golden rule, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Also be that when it comes to your daily ritual. Remember that how you greet people, how you talk to people, how you treat people is all a reflection of what's inside your heart. And greet people and acknowledge them and treat them as they are, as if they were another you. And then there's greetings. How we greet one another is a ritual. In some cultures, they say peace be upon you, which is what assalamu alaikum means, or grand rising, or peace and blessings, peace and love, in la catch, namaste, whatever you say. All of these things are a form of a ritual greeting, um, almost like a prayer or affirmation in a sense, because of what the meaning of these greetings, and take them with all seriousness when you greet people. Make sure that how you greet people is something pleasant and uplifting. Speak life over people when you greet them or when you acknowledge them. You know, um, I used to work at a place, and at a school, in fact, and there was this coworker who, some mornings I would come in the building and I would, greet everybody. And some days she would say, I don't feel like saying, speaking to anybody right now. I'm not having a good day. And she would say that a lot. So many days, I would speak to her. She wouldn't respond. And she was like, I don't feel like talking to anybody today. I'm not, having a good day. And so I was like, Okay. And just keep walking. And then sometime I would hear her greet other people, but for whatever reason, she wasn't having a good day when I greeted her. So things like that. Remember to honor yourself and to honor others when you are interacting with people. Now I know we're not always going to be in the best of moods and in the best of manners at all times, hopefully, but not always. We got to be realistic. And if so, still speak life over yourself and others, even when you're not feeling at your best. Remember that you are an alchemist. You can change the outcome of a situation or a place by holding the light and being the one to speak positive, life affirming things over yourself and others, even in difficult times or times when you're not quite feeling it, shift the energy and remember, to speak with praise and um, speak with goodness and gladness. Um, be aware that when you're greeting and how you leave people is is an example of extending peace and leaving them with something better than what you came to the conversation or the interaction with. Leave them with some good thoughts and some positive intentions. Um, we survived, family, through so many things, mainly because of our connection to spirit and knowing that we were connected to each other and connected to our ancestors and divinity and to Mother Earth. All of that is a mouthful, but that is what helped get us through, is our spiritual practices, our cultural practices, knowing who we are and who we came from. um One of the tactics of the colonization was to divide and conquer us. And with divide and conquer, they planted the seeds of distrust and inflamed the dislike or lack of disloyalty amongst us. Now, family, we have to decolonize our minds and our spirits. And one way we can do that when it comes to divide and conquer, it is time to unite and prosper. Divide and conquer takes on many different forms and it looks different. It's so many different examples of it, I should say. So let's eliminate the divisiveness and the distrust and the disloyalty and think of ways to come together, because when people come together and work together, they accomplish much more. Let us be united by our the things that we have in common and not focus so much on the differences. And differences are fine. Differences are not um necessarily negative, because we are going to have some differences. We're not going to we have to agree to disagree sometimes. We're not always going to be thinking the exact same way. However, um just because we think different or do some things differently doesn't mean that we have to be divided over that. We can still come together and work together and not allow us to be conquered from within. And we are fighting for a cause greater than we can imagine and fighting the same enemy that our ancestors were fighting. It's just a different battle now. It's the enemy is that sinister enemy is still there. It's just taking on a different form now. And the battles that the ancestors fought is still going on now. We're still facing industries destroying our forests, our our waterways. We're still fighting to preserve our families and to save our families. We're still dealing with some of the same things they dealt with. It's just a different technology in a different time now. But how they say, the same soup, just a different bowl. Same war, same struggle, just different technology. So we all have this higher mission, I think. Each of us, our lives do have purpose and meaning. We all have this higher mission that we can listen to and a calling, but we must respond to that calling, and it's a personal journey. Many people may, think something's, may think you're strange because you don't do things the way others do, or you don't go along with the status quo, or you may be the person in your bloodline, in your lineage, that is most connected to um the ancestors or your elders, and maybe some other people are not, and that's fine. That's not wrong. It's just that that may be your higher calling, and your calling is a personal one. It's not a conference call. So when they don't understand and they don't support why you're concerned with preserving and reconnecting to sacred spiritual traditions and cultural traditions that, they may have been taught to discard or not to use or to ignore, and you don't want to, that's fine. That may be your calling, that may be your purpose to re establish those for your family, or to preserve those for your bloodline and your lineage and for your culture. That might be your job, your duty, your role, and everybody, like I said, there's a calling, and your calling may not look like theirs. So remember, you are the teammate that is, and you have a whole team, a spiritual team or council that is with you, and they're all rooting for you, and they're expressing themselves through you. Remember, we are so much more than we have ever imagined. We're part of the universe, we're part of nature itself. One of the reasons I'm heavily involved now in environmental and climate justice, because our ancestors were environmentalists. They lived lives that were in harmony and in balance with nature, never taking more than they needed, planting and leaving offerings and gifts when they took things. They looked at all of nature as sacred and alive, and just that honoring of divine spirit that is in all things. That is something that we all should acknowledge, and acknowledge in each other and in life itself and in nature itself. Our ancestors followed natural cycles, natural timing frequencies of the earth, when to plant, what to plant when not to, when to migrate, when to what directions to build your home. Should your front door face east? Should it face this way? That all of those things had meaning and had purpose. And they lived according to the cycles of nature, the cycles of natural time. And those are things that we are re-embracing, and as we discover and accept our cultural roots and our spiritual roots. And it's time, family, to remember these things, and remember that we are caretakers of the earth as much as our foreparents were before us. We are carriers of this sacred knowledge, and you are such a person that feels close to the earth and close to the ancestors, and you are the vessel through which they will do their best work in expressing themselves. And with that, I hope this message was enlightening and helpful to you all. Please remember to like and subscribe, comment in the comment section if you have any questions, or just want to share how you are progressing on your spiritual journey, please do so. If you have any questions about anything related to the content on this channel, please send me an email. You can send one at my website at astrohealingarts.org or astrohealingarts@yahoo.com. And I look forward to speaking with you next time. Thank you, everyone. And remember to be patient with yourself and others because we are breaking um, thousands of years of outdated mental and conditioning as we rise and awaken into higher states of consciousness at this time. So, with that said, I bid you all to have a wonderful evening filled with love, peace, and harmony, and good health and prosperity. And I will talk to you next time. Peace and love.